Jake stood at the threshold of the temple, feeling the weight of decision pressing down on him. Behind him, his teammates waited with their equipment ready to document whatever they found inside. Beside him, Zara watched with eyes that held both hope and ancient knowledge. The open doorway glowed with soft light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. "I'm going in," Jake said finally, but slowly and carefully. Ben nodded and adjusted his scanner settings. "I'll monitor for any dangerous energy spikes or environmental hazards. So far, everything looks safe, but we should stay cautious." Lisa activated her recording equipment. This was definitely going into the history books. First human to enter an ancient temple on an alien world. Jake took his first step across the threshold. The moment his foot touched the floor inside the temple, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. More lights activated deeper in the structure, revealing a corridor that stretched ahead into the distance. The floor beneath his feet felt warm and seemed to hum with energy. Zara followed him inside, her skin patterns shifting to deep blues and purples that Jake now recognized as signs of reverence or ceremony. She spoke softly, and the translation. The voice converted her words. "My ancestors dreamed of this moment for countless generations. The Star Builder's home awakens for their children." As they moved deeper into the temple, Jake noticed that the walls were covered with more than just decorative symbols. These looked like control panels or information displays, though unlike any technology he had ever seen. The symbols moved and changed as they passed, as if the temple was trying to communicate with them. About 50 meters into the corridor, they reached a large circular chamber. Jake stopped and stared in amazement. The room was enormous, easily 100 meters across, with a domed ceiling that rose high above them. But what took his breath away were the holographic displays that filled the space. Three-dimensional images floated in the air throughout the chamber, showing star maps, planetary systems, and what appeared to be historical records. Jake recognized some of the star patterns from Earth's sky, but many others were completely unfamiliar. The level of detail was incredible. He could see individual planets, their moons, and even what looked like artificial structures around some of the stars. Ben rushed past Jake to get closer to the displays, his scanner beeping frantically. "This is impossible. These holographic projections are completely solid to my instruments. It's like they're made of actual matter, not just light." Lisa was documenting everything with her camera, but Jake could see the amazement on her face. "The resolution is perfect. I can see surface features on planets that must be hundreds of light years away. How is this possible?" Zara moved to the center of the chamber and placed her hand on what looked like a crystal pedestal. The moment she touched it, her skin patterns began to glow, and the holographic displays around them shifted and changed. New images appeared, showing what were clearly different species from across the galaxy. The translation device worked as Zara spoke. The Star Builders made records of all the children they scattered among the stars. "Look, Star Traveler, and see your true heritage." Jake approached one of the closer displays that showed a planet with blue oceans and green continents. His heart stopped when he realized he was looking at Earth, but an Earth that was somehow different. The continents were in the wrong positions, and there were structures on the surface that definitely weren't there in his time. "That's Earth," he whispered, "but it's not the Earth we know." More displays activated around them, showing other planets with similar blue and green worlds. On each one, Jake could see evidence of civilization, cities, transportation networks, and what appeared to be spaceports. The holographic timeline above each display showed dates that stretched back millions of years. Ben was studying the technological readouts that accompanied each display. "Jake, if these records are accurate, there was an advanced human civilization millions of years ago. They didn't just achieve space travel, they colonized dozens of worlds across the galaxy." Lisa had found a display that seemed to show the construction of the temple they were standing in. "Look at this. It shows humans working alongside other species to build these temples. They weren't conquering other worlds, they were cooperating with the species they found there." Jake moved from display to display, each one revealing more of humanity's forgotten history. The ancient humans hadn't just traveled to other worlds. They had helped existing species develop their own technologies and civilizations. They had created a network of worlds connected by technology that was far beyond anything current humanity had achieved. Zara joined him at a display that showed her own world. The Star Builders came to our world when my people were still learning to make tools. They taught us to work with the crystal technology. They gave us knowledge and asked us to guard their gifts until their children returned. Jake stared at the image of ancient humans working alongside primitive Veltar. Your people aren't just guardians. You're our allies, our partners in this network. The translation device converted Zara's excited response. Yes! The old stories say the Star Builders promised to return when their children were ready to reclaim their place among the stars. You touching the door proved you are ready. Ben had found what appeared to be a technical specifications display. Jake, you need to see this. These records show the locations of similar temples on hundreds of worlds. Each one contains technology that's designed to activate when humans arrive. It's like they left a treasure map for their descendants. Lisa was examining a historical timeline that stretched across multiple displays. The records show that the ancient human civilization existed for millions of years before something happened. There was some kind of catastrophe that forced them to abandon their colonies and return to Earth. Jake found a display that showed what had happened to the ancient civilization. The images were difficult to interpret, but they seemed to show a galaxy-wide conflict with some kind of hostile force. The ancient humans had been forced to shut down their network and hide their technology to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. They didn't just disappear, Jake realized. They went into hiding. They shut down all their advanced technology and started over on Earth, waiting for humanity to develop naturally until we were ready to reclaim our heritage. Zara moved to another pedestal and activated a different set of displays. These showed not historical records, but current information. Star maps updated in real time, showing the positions of ships and civilizations across the galaxy. Jake realized he was looking at a communication network that spanned the entire galaxy. The awakening you triggered sent a signal. The translation device read as Zara spoke. Other temples on other worlds are receiving the message. Other guardian species are preparing for the return of the Star Builders' children. Ben looked up from his scanner with an expression of wonder and concern. The energy reading suggests this network is already connecting with similar installations across multiple star systems. Jake, whatever we've activated here, it's much bigger than just this one planet. Jake felt overwhelmed by the scope of what they had discovered. Humanity wasn't just a young species taking its first steps into the galaxy. They were the descendants of an ancient civilization that had once spanned the stars. The technology around him represented knowledge and capabilities that could revolutionize everything about human civilization. But the displays also showed that reactivating this network would announce humanity's return to the galaxy. Other species would know that the descendants of the Star Builders had finally reclaimed their heritage. Some of those species might welcome humanity's return, but others might see it as a threat. Lisa approached Jake with a serious expression. We have to decide what to do with this information. Do we activate the full network and announce humanity's return to the galaxy? Or do we study everything carefully first and prepare for the consequences? Jake looked around the chamber at the incredible technology surrounding them, then at Zara, whose people had waited countless generations for this moment. The choice he made now would determine not just his own future, but the future of both species and possibly many others across the galaxy. The three humans worked around the temple entrance for the rest of the day as the pale suns moved across the lavender sky. Ben's equipment hummed and beat constantly as it analyzed every aspect of the door mechanism. Lisa documented the wall carvings with her cameras and scanners, building a complete record of the symbols and their arrangements. Jake helped both of them while fighting an internal battle about what he should do. Every few minutes, Jake found his eyes drifting toward the crystal formations where Zara was hidden. He still couldn't see her, but occasionally he caught glimpses of soft light moving among the crystals in patterns that seemed too deliberate to be natural. She was watching and waiting, just as she had promised Dot as the day wore on. Then scans revealed more incredible details about the temple's construction. The entire structure was built around a central power core that drew energy from deep within the planet itself. The door mechanism was connected to sensors throughout the building that could detect approaching life forms and analyze their biological signatures. "This is definitely designed to recognize humans specifically," Ben said, as he studied his latest readings. "The scanners are calibrated for human DNA markers, human brain wave patterns, even human body temperature and blood chemistry. It's like whoever built this knew exactly what humans would be like." Lisa looked up from photographing a particularly complex section of wall carvings. Or maybe they were human themselves. "Look at what I found in these panels." She pointed to a series of symbols that showed figures building the temple. The proportions of these builders match human anatomy perfectly. Same height ratios, same limb lengths, even the way they hold tools looks distinctly human. Jake studied the carvings Lisa was indicating. The figures did look remarkably human, though the artistic style made it hard to be completely certain. More interesting were the backgrounds of the panels, which showed star patterns that Jake thought he recognized from Earth's night sky. Ben packed up some of his equipment and stood back to look at the door as a whole. "I've learned everything I can without actually activating the mechanism. All my reading suggests it's safe to touch. The door appears to be designed to open gently, not explosively. But once we activate it, there's probably no going back." Jake felt his heart racing. This was the moment he had been dreading and anticipating all day. His scientific training told him they should document everything and contact Earth before proceeding. But something deeper, something he couldn't quite name, was pulling him toward that handprint. "What do you think we should do?" Jake asked his teammates, though he suspected he already knew what they would say. Lisa and Ben exchanged glances. "We came here to make discoveries," Lisa said. "This could be the most important archaeological find in human history. We have to investigate." Ben nodded in agreement. "My scans show no signs of danger. The mechanism appears to be a simple lock waiting for the right key. In this case, the key is a human hand." Jake looked at the handprint depression one more time. The blue crystal inside it seemed to pulse slightly, as if it sensed his presence. He thought about all the warnings in science fiction stories about touching unknown alien technology. But those concerns seemed silly now. If Ben was right, this wasn't alien technology at all. "All right," Jake said, stepping closer to the door. "Let's see what our ancestors left for us." Lisa and Ben moved back a safe distance and activated their recording equipment. Jake stood directly in front of the handprint and took a deep breath. The crystal depression was exactly the right size for his hand. Even the angle seemed perfect, as if it had been designed specifically for him. Jake pressed his palm against the blue crystal surface. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The moment his skin made contact, the crystal began to glow brighter. Warmth spread up his arm as the door mechanism scanned his biological signatures. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation. Not painful, but definitely alien. As if something was reading his thoughts and memories. The glow spread outward from the handprint across the entire surface of the massive doors. Symbols that had been dark suddenly blazed with light, creating patterns that seemed to tell a story of welcome and recognition. A deep harmonic sound began to resonate from within the temple, like the largest bell in the universe ringing with perfect clarity. Ben's equipment went crazy, detecting energy surges throughout the temple complex. "Jake, the entire building is activating. Power levels are increasing across the board." The doors themselves began to move. Without any grinding or mechanical noise, they swung inward as if they weighed nothing at all. Cool air flowed out of the opening, carrying scents of ozone and something floral that Jake couldn't identify. As the doors opened fully, lights began to activate inside the temple, revealing a vast interior space. Jake stepped back from the entrance, his hands still tingling from contact with the crystal. Through the doorway, he could see a chamber that stretched far beyond what should have been possible given the temple's external size. The walls inside glowed with the same soft light as the door mechanism, and complex patterns of symbols moved across their surfaces like living text. "Incredible," Lisa whispered, raising her camera to document everything. The interior space is much larger than the exterior dimension suggests. Some kind of spatial manipulation technology. Ben was frantically checking his instruments. The power readings are off the charts now. Whatever we just activated, it's drawing massive amounts of energy from the planetary core. And I'm detecting similar activations at dozens of locations across the planet. Jake, I think you just turned on a planet-wide network. From somewhere behind them came a sound like wind chimes mixed with singing. Jake turned to see Zara emerging from her hiding place among the crystal formations. The patterns on her skin were blazing with colors Jake had never seen before, cycling through brilliant golds and whites that spoke of joy and amazement. Lisa and Ben spun around at the sound, their eyes widening as they saw Zara for the first time. "Jake," Lisa said quietly, "please tell me you knew about her." Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I was going to tell you both. I met her earlier today. Her name is Zara, and her people have been guarding this temple for generations." Zara approached them cautiously, her large purple eyes fixed on the open temple doors. She spoke in her musical language, and Jake quickly pulled out his translation. "Device." The words appeared on the screen. "The awakening has begun. The Star Builder's gifts are no longer sleeping. You have done what my people could never do." Ben was still staring at Zara in amazement. "She's incredible." The bioluminescent skin patterns suggest a form of visual communication. And her anatomy is clearly adapted for this planet's environment. Zara noticed Ben's scanner pointed in her direction and tilted her head curiously. She spoke again, and the translation read, "The Metal Watchers see much but understand little. The temple chooses who may enter. It has chosen the Star Traveler." Jake looked from Zara to his teammates to the open temple entrance. Everything had changed in the space of a few seconds. The temple was awake. Zara was no longer hidden, and according to Ben's readings, they had activated something much larger than just one building. Lisa lowered her camera and looked at Jake seriously. "We need to contact Earth immediately. This discovery changes everything we thought we knew about human history and our place in the galaxy." But Zara was shaking her head and speaking urgently. The translation device worked to keep up. The other sky people must not know yet. The awakening is not complete. The Star Traveler must see the gifts first, must understand the choice that waits inside. Jake felt pulled in two directions. His scientific training said they should follow proper protocols and contact Earth before proceeding. But Zara's words suggested there was something crucial he needed to understand before involving others. And the open temple doors seemed to beckon him forward, promising answers to questions he didn't even know he should ask. The choice was his to make, and whatever he decided would change not just his life, but possibly the future of humanity itself. Jake reached the top of the valley just as his teammates crested the hill from the opposite direction. Dr. Lisa Park, the team's geologist, was the first to spot him. She waved and called out with obvious relief in her voice. Behind her came Ben Cooper, their technology specialist, carrying a pack full of scanning equipment. "Jake, we were getting worried when you didn't respond to our calls," Lisa said as she approached. "Your communicators showed you were moving, but we couldn't reach you directly." Jake felt guilty for worrying them, but knew he couldn't explain everything right away. "Sorry, I got caught up studying some interesting crystal formations. The mineral composition here is unlike anything I've seen before." Ben pulled out his own scanner and swept it across the area. "You're right about that. I'm getting some strange energy readings from this whole region. There's definitely advanced technology somewhere nearby." Jake's heart jumped. If Ben's equipment could detect the temple from this distance, keeping it secret would be impossible. He needed to find a way to control how his teammates learned about Zara and the ancient structure. What kind of technology? Jake asked, trying to sound casually curious. Hard to say exactly, Ben replied, adjusting his scanner settings. The power source is massive, though. Whatever it is, it's been running continuously for a very long time. The energy signature suggests something much more advanced than anything we've encountered before. Lisa was examining the crystal formations around them with growing excitement. These aren't natural formations at all. Look at these cutting marks. Someone shaped these with precision tools. Jake, this could be evidence of a major alien civilization. Jake nodded, knowing they were about to discover much more than they expected. I think we should investigate together. One found some larger structures deeper in the hills that you both need to see. Over the next hour, Jake led his teammates along the same path Zara had shown him. He kept watch for any sign of the alien girl but saw nothing. She was keeping her promise to stay hidden. Until the others left. As they walked, Jake shared what he had learned about the crystal technology, being careful not to mention his encounter with Zara. When they reached the valley overlook, both Lisa and Ben stopped walking and stared in amazement at the temple. Below, Ben's scanner began beeping rapidly as it detected the enormous energy output from the structure. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. "The scale of this architecture. It must have taken centuries to build." Ben was focused on his readings. "Jake, the energy coming from that building could power a small city. And look at these material analysis readings. This crystal composition is completely unknown. It's like nothing in any database." Jake led them down into the valley, watching his teammates' amazement grow with each step. The temple seemed even more impressive the second time he saw it. The dark crystal walls caught and reflected the light from the three suns, creating patterns that seemed to move and shift across. The surface dot as they approached the base of the temple, Lisa ran her hands along the crystal walls in wonder. The construction technique is completely alien. These walls aren't built from separate blocks. The entire structure seems to have been grown or shaped from a single piece of material. Ben was studying the carved symbols that covered the lower walls. These markings look like some kind of writing system, but the scanner can't match them to any known language. The style reminds me of human writing, though. See how the symbols flow in linear patterns? Jake's pulse quickened at Ben's observation. If his teammate was noticing similarities to human writing without any prompting, maybe Zara's claims about star travelers weren't as far-fetched as they seemed. They completed a full circuit of the temple, with Lisa and Ben documenting everything they could. When they reached the main entrance, both of Jake's teammates fell silent. The massive crystal doors with their intricate carvings were clearly the focal point of the entire structure. "Look at this craftsmanship," Lisa said, running her scanner over the carved symbols. "The level of detail is extraordinary. Whoever built this had technology far beyond what we've achieved." Ben was focused on the handprint depression in the center of the doors. "This looks like some kind of activation mechanism. See how the crystal here is different from the rest? It's almost like it's waiting for some kind of input." Jake stepped closer to examine the handprint with his teammates. In the daylight, with better scanning equipment, he could see details he had missed before. The depression was definitely sized for a human hand, complete with 5 finger spaces. More importantly, Ben's scanners were detecting active circuitry throughout the door mechanism. "It's definitely designed for someone with human-like hands," Ben continued. "But that doesn't make sense. Humans have never been to this part of the galaxy before our expedition." Lisa was studying the carvings around the handprint. "Unless humans weren't the first to develop space travel. Jake, what if there was an earlier human civilization that we don't know about? One that reached the stars long before our current technology?" The idea sent chills down Jake's spine. It matched exactly what Zara had told him about the star builders who had created the temple. But how could ancient humans have achieved interstellar travel millions of years ago and then disappear from history. Ben placed his equipment pack on the ground and pulled out a more sophisticated scanner. I'm going to do a deep analysis of this door mechanism. If it's really designed for human activation, we need to understand how it works. As Ben worked, Lisa continued studying the wall carvings. Jake, come look at this. Some of these symbols. They remind me of ancient human writing systems. Not exactly the same, but there are similarities in the way they're structured. Jake joined Lisa at the wall while Ben focused on the door mechanism. The carvings were indeed complex, telling what appeared to be a story across multiple panels. The symbols showed figures that looked humanoid working with the same crystal technology they saw around them. In some panels, the figures appeared to be traveling between stars. It's like a historical record, Lisa said excitedly. Look here, this panel shows what might be ships leaving the planet, and this one shows the construction of the temple itself. Ben called out from the door. You both need to see this. My deep scan is showing something incredible. This door mechanism isn't just waiting for a human hand. It's specifically calibrated to respond to human DNA and neural patterns. It's like it was designed to recognize actual humans, not just something with similar hands. Jake felt his mouth go dry. If Ben was right, then the temple really had been built by humans or for humans. But that raised even more questions about how such technology was possible so long ago. There's more, Ben continued. The entire temple is connected to a vast underground network. This isn't just one building. It's part of a complex that extends for kilometers beneath the surface. And everything is still active, still powered, still waiting. Lisa looked from Ben to Jake with growing excitement. We could be looking at the discovery of a century, evidence of ancient human space travel, technology beyond our current capabilities, and a structure that's been waiting for us to return. Jake stared at the handprint in the door and felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. His teammates were ready to begin a full scientific investigation of the temple. They would want to activate the door mechanism, explore the interior, and document everything they found. But Jake kept thinking about Zara's words about some doors only opening when the time was right. Ben began setting up more equipment around the door. I want to run a complete analysis before we attempt activation. If this technology is as advanced as it appears, we need to be careful about what we might trigger. As his teammates worked, Jake found himself looking toward the crystal formations where Zara was hiding. He couldn't see her, but he could feel her presence watching them. She had brought him here because she believed he was meant to activate the temple. But was he ready for whatever lay beyond those ancient doors? Zara stood beside Jake at the edge of the valley, watching his reaction to the massive crystal structure below them. The patterns on her skin shifted to deeper blues and purples, colors Jake was beginning to recognize as signs of seriousness or concern. She gestured toward the dark temple and spoke in her musical language, her voice carrying notes of reverence and fear. Jake pulled out his scanner again and pointed it toward the structure. The readings made him step back in surprise. The energy signatures coming from the temple were unlike anything in his database. Whatever technology powered that building was far beyond current human understanding. More importantly, the readings suggested the structure was still active after who knew how many thousands of years. Zara noticed his amazement and touched his arm gently. When Jake looked at her, she pointed to herself and then gestured in a sweeping motion toward the hills around them. Then she pointed down into the ground and made digging motions with her hands. Jake understood. Her people lived underground, hidden beneath this crystal landscape. She began walking down into the valley, moving carefully along a path that seemed carved into the crystal rock. Jake followed, his boots sliding slightly on the smooth surface. As they descended, the air grew warmer and filled with a humming sound that seemed to come from the temple itself. The massive structure loomed larger with each step, its dark crystal walls reaching high above them. When they reached the valley floor, Zara stopped and turned to face Jake. She pointed to the temple and then to herself, shaking her head. Then she pointed to Jake and nodded. Her meaning was clear even without words. Her people did not enter the temple, but she believed Jake could. Jake activated his translation device, hoping it might pick up some of Zara's language patterns. The device beeped and began processing the sounds she made. After a few minutes of Zara speaking slowly and clearly, words began appearing on the small screen. "My people guard this place for many seasons," the translated text read. "We wait for star travelers to return. The old stories say only those from beyond sky can wake the sleeping temple." Jake looked from the device to Zara's hopeful face. "Star travelers? You mean people from other planets?" Zara nodded eagerly when the translation device converted his words into her language. She pointed upward and made whooshing sounds like ships flying through air. Then she pointed to Jake and spoke again. The translation appeared, "You come from stars like the builders did. The temple calls the star people. My grandmother's grandmother told stories of those who made this place. They looked different but walked on two legs like you." Jake felt his heart racing. If Zara was right, this temple had been built by space travelers from long ago. But which species had built it? And why had they left? He looked up at the towering crystal walls and noticed something he had missed before. There were markings carved into the surface, symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched them. Zara tugged at his sleeve and led him around the base of the temple. As they walked, she continued talking, and the translation device worked to convert her words. She told him about her people, the Veltar, who had lived on this world for countless generations. They had found the temple when they first arrived, but none of them had ever been able to activate it or enter the sealed chambers within. "We have stories," the translation read as Zara spoke. "Stories say the builders went away but promised to return. They left gifts for their children who would come after them. The temple holds these gifts, waiting for the right ones to claim them." They completed their circuit around the temples. Base and stopped before what was clearly the main entrance. Massive doors made of the same dark crystal rose 30 feet above them. The surface was covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story, though Jake couldn't read the symbols. In the center of the doors was a circular depression about the size of a human hand. Zara pointed to the handprint and spoke urgently. The translation device struggled with her rapid speech, but managed to convey her meaning. "The stories say the star builders left their mark here. Only their touch can open the way." Jake stared at the handprint. It did look roughly human size, though it was hard to tell exactly. The depression was filled with a softer crystal that glowed faintly blue. Everything about this place suggested technology far beyond what humans had achieved. Yet Zara seemed convinced that humans were connected to it somehow. "How long have your people been here?" Jake asked, watching the translation device convert his words. Zara's skin pattern shifted as she thought. "Many, many generations. More than stars in small sky." She pointed to a cluster of stars visible even in the daylight. "My people keep the old knowledge. We remember the promise." Jake was about to ask more questions when a sound echoed across the valley. It was a deep horn blast coming from the direction they had traveled. Jake recognized it immediately. It was the emergency signal from his shuttle. His teammates were calling for him. Zara heard the sound too, and her skin patterns flashed with alarm. She grabbed Jake's arm and spoke rapidly. The translation device caught fragments. "Danger. Others come. Must hide." But Jake shook his head. "Those are my friends. They're probably worried because I've been gone so long." Zara looked confused and worried. She pointed toward the hills and made urgent gestures. It was clear she wanted Jake to hide or leave quickly. Her fears seemed genuine, but Jake couldn't understand why she was afraid of his teammates. The horn sounded again, closer this time. Jake could see movement on the hilltops. His teammates were coming to look for him. He turned to Zara and spoke carefully, knowing the translation device would convert his words. "I need to go back to my friends. But I want to return here. Will you wait for me?" Zara's patterns shifted through several colors as she considered. Finally, she nodded and pointed to a cluster of crystal formations near the temple entrance. She spoke slowly so the translation device could follow. "I will wait in the singing stones." When the other star people leave, I will show you more. The temple has been sleeping too long. Perhaps you are the one the stories speak of. Jake wanted to stay and learn more, but the horn sounded a third time, and he knew his teammates would send out search drones soon if he didn't respond. He pulled out his communicator and sent a signal back to let them know he was safe and returning. Before leaving, Jake took one more look at the temple entrance and the mysterious handprint carved into the crystal doors. Something deep inside him felt drawn to touch it, but he knew this wasn't the right time. He needed to return to his team and figure out how to handle this discovery properly. Zara seemed to sense his internal conflict. She touched his shoulder gently and spoke one more time. The translation came through clearly. The temple has waited for countless seasons. It can wait a little longer. But do not wait too long, Star Traveler. Some doors only open when the time is right. With that cryptic warning, Zara moved gracefully toward the crystal formations she had indicated. Jake watched as she seemed to blend into the glowing structures, becoming almost invisible among their shifting lights. He marked the location carefully in his memory and began to climb back up the valley wall toward his waiting teammates. As he climbed, Jake's mind raced with questions and possibilities. Had he really found evidence of an ancient human civilization? Or was this temple built by some other species that just happened to be humanoid? Either way, he knew his life had just changed forever. The discovery of this temple would revolutionize everything humans thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Jake Martinez stepped out of the small research shuttle and felt the alien wind hit his face. The air was thin but breathable, carrying strange scents of flowers he had never smelled before. Purple grass swayed beneath his boots as he looked around at the landscape of Kepler 442c. 3 pale suns hung in the lavender sky, casting everything in soft shadows. Behind him, his 2 teammates were already setting up equipment near their landing site. Jake was the team's xenorchaeologist, which meant he studied the remains of alien civilizations. This planet had caught the attention of Earth scientists because satellite scans showed the ruins of what looked like an advanced culture. The strange part was that no life signs had been detected from orbit. Jake walked away from the shuttle toward a cluster of crystal formations that jutted from the ground like frozen lightning. These weren't natural crystals, though. They had been shaped and carved with tools. Someone had lived here once, but the question was when and where they had gone. The crystals hummed softly as Jake approached. He pulled out his scanner and ran it over the nearest formation. The device beeped and showed readings that made his eyebrows rise. The crystal was older than any technology humans had ever discovered. It was also still active, drawing power from some unknown source deep underground. Jake was so focused on his readings that he almost missed the movement in his peripheral vision. A flash of pale blue darted between the crystal spires about 50 meters away. He looked up from his scanner and squinted. Nothing moved now except the purple grass and the wind. He took a few steps toward where he had seen the movement. The ground here was covered in what looked like tiny glass flowers that shined like bells when his boots disturbed them. Jake knelt down to examine them more closely. They weren't plants at all, but some kind of crystalline growth that seemed to pulse with inner light. A soft sound made him look up. Standing just 10 meters away was the most unusual being Jake had ever seen. She was clearly not human, but had a roughly humanoid shape. She stood about 5 feet tall with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Patterns of light moved across her skin like slow lightning, pulsing gently in shades of blue and silver. Her face was delicate with large eyes that took up much of her head. The eyes were a deep purple color and seemed to hold an intelligence that was both alien and familiar. Jake froze. First contact protocols rushed through his mind. He was supposed to retreat and call his team immediately, but something about the being's posture told him she was as surprised to see him as he was. To see her. She stood perfectly still, watching him with those large eyes. Slowly, Jake raised his hands with palms open to show he meant no harm. The being tilted her head to one side, studying his gesture. Then she did something unexpected. She raised her own hands, and copied his movement exactly. Her hands had 4 long fingers instead of 5, and the skin between them was slightly webbed. Jake smiled and lowered his hand slowly. The being lowered hers as well. He pointed to himself and said clearly, "Jake." Then he pointed to her with a questioning expression. The being seemed to understand. She touched her chest and made a sound that was like wind chimes mixed with running water. Jake couldn't reproduce the sound exactly, but it reminded him of the name Zara. He pointed to her again and said, "Zara?" She nodded, which was apparently a gesture her species shared with humans. Then she did something that surprised Jake even more. She pointed to his scanner and made a questioning sound. Jake looked down at the device in his hand and then back at her. Carefully, he held it out so she could see it better. Zara stepped closer. Her movements were graceful, almost like she was floating rather than walking. When she was close enough, Jake could see that her skin wasn't just glowing, but was covered in tiny scales that caught and reflected light. She reached out one webbed hand toward the scanner, but stopped short of touching it, looking at Jake for permission. Jake nodded and held the device steady. Zara's fingers brushed against the scanner, and she made a soft sound of wonder. The patterns of light on her skin began to pulse faster, cycling through different colors. Jake realized this might be how her species showed emotion or excitement. Encouraged by her interest, Jake activated the scanner and showed her the display. Zara's eyes widened as she watched the readout scroll across the small screen. She looked from the scanner to the crystal formations around them and back to the scanner. Then she pointed at the crystals and made a series of sounds that Jake couldn't understand but recognized as some kind of language. Jake wished desperately that he had brought the translation device from the shuttle. He pointed toward their landing. Sidon made walking motions with his fingers. Zara seemed to understand and shook her head. She pointed in the opposite direction, toward a range of low hills in the distance. Then she looked at Jake with those large purple eyes and made what sounded like an invitation. This was completely against protocol. Jake was supposed to make first contact only under controlled conditions with his full team present. But something about Zara's manner convinced him that she wasn't dangerous. She seemed curious about him and his technology, but not afraid or hostile. If anything, she appeared excited to meet him. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He pointed to himself, then to Zara, then toward the hills where she had indicated. Zara's skin patterns flashed brighter, and she made a sound that might have been laughter. She nodded eagerly and began walking toward the hills. As they walked together through the alien landscape, Jake tried to learn more about his new companion. Zara seemed fascinated by everything he carried. She pointed at his boots, his clothes, and especially his equipment. When Jake showed her how his portable light worked, she clapped her hands together in delight. The sound was like drops of water. Hitting crystal. Zara led him along paths that weren't visible until they were right on them. The ground here was firmer, made of the same crystal material as the formations near the landing site. As they climbed higher into the hills, Jake could see that the entire landscape was dotted with crystal structures. Some were small like the ones he had first examined. Others were massive towers that stretched high into the pale sky. After walking for about an hour, Zara stopped and turned to Jake. She pointed ahead and made a series of sounds that seemed urgent or important. Jake looked in the direction she was pointing, but couldn't see anything unusual. Just more crystal formations and purple grass waving in the wind. Zara tugged gently at his sleeve and led him forward a few more steps. Then Jake saw it, hidden. In a valley between the hills was a structure unlike anything he had ever seen. It was enormous, easily the size of a football stadium, but it seemed to grow from the ground itself. The walls curved and flowed like frozen water, made of the same crystal material as everything else on the planet, but somehow different. This crystal was darker, almost black, and it pulsed with a deep inner light that made Jake's skin tingle. Even from a distance, Zara looked at Jake and spoke again. Though he couldn't understand her words, her meaning was clear. She had brought him here to show him something important. something that had been waiting for a very long time.